I am Hernan Cortez, and I'm here to conquer this land. Oh, it's early Latin America, not like the United States of America. It's awkward. Hey guys, it's Georgia. Welcome to this episode of Blast Course. Hernan Cortez traveled over from Spain to the Aztecs and was struck beauty of the capital of the Aztecs. He was also shocked by the size of the city. And the Spaniards were impressed with the Inca city of Peru. The initial conquest left the cities sacked, the temples were destroyed, and the rubble, well, it was used for foundation of conquerors' own house of worships. Moctezuma was alarmed by the stories he heard of the white men who traveled on the boats and moved the hills over the waves. 15th and 16th century, Spain and Portugal made an empire in the Americas by conquest and settlement, which is now known as Latin America, which is now why we're talking about it. It created a new economy with gold and silver and new crops and all that jazz. They had Latin American societies that had new political and cultural forms. They were like something completely new. Within these Latin America societies, they had a multiracial society. Also had a hierarchy based off race. The three major groups were, again, Indians, Africans, and whites. They were all brought together under the Europeans as conquerors and voluntary immigrants. Their conquest involved sexual exploitation of Indian women, concubines and female servants. And mixed marriages were also common, which resulted in the growth of population of mixed background kids, which were also known as mestizos. So they had a sociedad de castas, which is the Europeans or the whites who were on top of the hierarchy, and then at the bottom was the Africans or the blacks, and then in the middle were the mixed people or the mestizos. So mestizos, again the mixed people, made up 35 to 40% of the population. The blacks, or the slaves, or the Africans, made up a third of the population, and the whites made up 28% of the population. A lot of restrictions increased on the mestizos or the mixed population as it continued to grow. And for rank and status in society, how you were and what ethnicity you were played a huge part in society. The majority of the wealthy people there, majority keyword, were whites. Peninsulares were those who were born in Spain, and then Creoles were the ones who were born in the New World, which was early Latin America, basically. So the Creoles, the ones who were born in the New World, dominated the local economies, and they were also top of society as well. They were also really proud of their accomplishments, but did not take ideas or anything from outside cultures, only stuck to what was in their culture. Shockingly, not really actually, it was a super, patriarchal society. So fathers had a legal authority over their children until they were 25. Modern day era, you have to be 18 and then you're gone. You can do whatever you want. Back then, you had to be 25, and it wasn't even your mother who cared. It was your father. Your father was in charge. And the women who got married became under the authority of their husband. Low-class women also worked in the fields, and they did a lot of labor work, so you could kind of say that low-class women were also similar to slaves. But low-class women were also African women. Marriages were arranged by the payment of a dowry, and this all transforms into the modern day because even in modern day society, most of you guys know, colored people are typically seen as less than as white people. Racism is still a problem now. The New World also consisted of a lot of ideas from the European side, from the Spain, which is why we have such a European based culture. Now it's time for the open letter. Dun, 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 dun. Anyways, dear Hernan Cortez, I would like to thank you for destroying the Aztecs. Also, thank you for creating your societies and civilizations. However, I do believe that importing African slaves was a poor choice. Yes, he did that. Poor decision. It became a very violent process in the future. I would personally like to thank you for bringing your language to the Americas, porque soy fluido en español y a mí me gusta. Thank you. See you later. Georgia Wall.
The destruction of the American Indian societies allowed for the American peoples to respond in many different ways when their land was invaded. First, the Caribbean population almost disappeared due to slavery, mistreatment, and disease. Second, there was an exploitation of the Indians in which the nobility kept their facilitated tax collection and labor demands. This caused the Indians to be unprotected and mobilized for project states. Despite the fact that they were unprotected and were enslaved, some learned the language and their law code and were able to fight for their freedom. This, however, did not fully work. Colonial economies and governments. In the colonies, many people worked in either farms or mines. Roughly 80% of all people that back then worked on the farm. The reason people worked in mines, however, was because of how precious the metals were to some people. This meant that the miners would earn a lot of money from finding these metals. The most popular place for mining was in the silver heart of the empire, where mining labor and methods were distributed. Roughly 160,000 people lived there, and they were either working in the town or were miners. The government loved miners because of the possibilities with making profit. The government took roughly 1/5 of their profit and controlled mercury because of this. The mining and farming also led to different types of trade. There was mercantilism and barter. The consulate also kept the prices high for these traders. Because of this huge exploitation, taking over the empire would not be hard, and this is exactly what they did. A fleet system popped up, and this protected the galleons. Ports were also created to protect their goods, and the American supply of silver paid for the Spanish wars. The church also played a part in this section, and missions were set up in frontier areas and churches established, towns/villages. Schools were also built from religious bodies, and the clergy taught a lot about law and theology. In conclusion, America's mining and farming was very popular, and it made them wealthy. When they wanted to take land, they were able to do so with this amount of wealth. Brazil's Age of Gold. In 1695, Brazil discovered gold in interior regions, and this set the age of gold for Brazil. Slaves were used to mine this gold, and Brazil soon became the biggest producer of gold. This allowed for the Brazilians to make the interior regions into settlement, and opened up new areas used for ranching and farming. Later, however, Brazil's gold went to Portugal and England, and there was a huge imbalance of trade. Brazil soon became economically dependent on England, and the story ends there.
Hello class, our lesson starts with Portugal and Spain's colonies. Portugal colonized India, Brazil, Africa, and the East Indies, leaving Spain with only colonizing the Caribbean and the Western Hemisphere. Spain's disadvantage to Portugal was that Spain had conquered areas that were not very civilized. Therefore, they had to start the urbanization from scratch. However, this did give them the advantage of being able to use the grid system to do this in an orderly fashion. The Europeans also brought the idea of conquest, which obligated the natives to work as laborers or slaves for the Europeans over at the haciendas. Moreover, the natives were poor slaves because they were immune to the diseases that the Europeans had brought over to the Americas through the foreign animals that they had imported into the Americas. Moreover, 4 factors made the Native Americans bad slaves, being language barrier, they could not farm, they were not immune to Europe's diseases, and they were very familiar with the land so they could easily run away, as opposed to the African slaves, which were imported in place of them, because first of all, they weren't familiar with the land, they were immune to these diseases, and they did know how to farm, which was most important in this case. This automatically placed the Africans above the natives in the social hierarchy of the Americas. The Americas' social hierarchy was based on skin tone, not wealth and power like in Europe. Moreover, Christianity actually justified slavery. Lastly, the Europeans brought Christianity and the concept of church-to-state relationship to the Americas. Christianity actually justified slavery, and this was actually very convenient for the state because it was convenient for the state in the economic aspect.